It's 7 o'clock on a Tuesday night, and where else would I be but here with you? DJ Stutz here with Little Hearts Academy and Imperfect Heroes podcast. And I just have such a meaningful and an episode that is very difficult for a lot of people to talk about. And so I wanted to hit it gently. I found this lady, Michele Benyo, and she has a nonprofit group called Good Grief Parenting. And she went through the death of her son from cancer. He was 7, I think. Anyway, she tells her story about in going through their grief, she was noticing all of the signs that her daughter was exhibiting. And so her daughter was 3.5 when the diagnosis first came, and she was 5 when everything kind of came to an end there. And just having to help her child, she's dealing with her own grief. If you can only imagine, she was dealing with her own grief, and yet looking at this beautiful little girl who was in total sorrow. And in fact, her daughter said to her, "Mommy, I feel like half of me is gone." Wow, that's a heavy hitter. And so in this week's episode, I have Michele Benyo on. This episode is available now. I should also put in, I am getting over COVID and I'm doing so much better, but I still have a cough. And so I've got my handy dandy water and a cough drop in my mouth. So I hope you'll be patient with me for having something in my mouth while I'm talking to you guys. Anyway, Michele Benyo, is so gracious to share her story and the path that they had to take to help their little girl manage through her grief and sense of loss while she and her husband were working through theirs. And I've heard a lot of people say, "Oh, they're young," or they probably won't even remember this. And yet there's evidence of children in their infancy going through a loss and struggling with the results of that into their whole lives. And it's kind of like that something's missing and they don't know what's there. People aren't really talking to them about what happened. And so they're just they just know something's wrong. And I've even had a friend who, had twins, and one of the twins died just a couple of days after birth. So this girl was very young, obviously just 2 days old, and yet, she was the surviving twin was one of my kids' friends. And even in high school, she would talk a lot about her twin and how she lost her twin and blah, blah, blah. And you could see that it still had an impact on her. Oh, excuse me. So I think that we really do a disservice in assuming that our kids are so young, they won't understand, whatever. That kids are capable of processing far more than we give them credit for. And they are able to express things in their own unique language. And the younger they are, the more help they may need with finding their words. And it's like this little girl saying, "I feel like half of me is gone." They might say things in a different way. So I remember that when my pops died, I was 13, and my world just came to an end because pops to me was like the whole world. And but he didn't live by us, and he actually lived with my aunt and her family, and Grams lived with them too. Pops had a heart attack and died in the garden, and we went up, had the whole funeral, everything. And then a week or so after that, once things settled down, my Grams was going to fly from Boise to Los Angeles to stay with us for a few weeks, kind of get the fuzz out of her head. And so my aunt took the kids all to the airport and to see Grams off. Now, back then, forever ago, it was very common you wouldn't only walk someone up to the gate, but it was typical for you to stay and actually watch the plane take off. I don't know why we did that so much. I think with little kids, though, kids are really engaged with planes. They're excited about them, And so that might be part of it. But they were there and they were watching the plane. And in fact, back then, Boise was not that big of a town. And it had a nice airport, but back in those days, you were still walking outside and going up, the stairs into the plane. And so Grams was heading out and got up in the plane, and they stayed outside. You could even do that. And they stayed outside there was a gate that, the spectators would watch. And as the plane went and taxied around, and then they saw the plane take off. And my young little teeny niece, she must have been maybe three or four, and she's not my niece, my cousin, she started crying. And my aunt was like, what is wrong? Are you okay? And she said, why does Grams have to go up to heaven too? Why can't she stay on earth with us? So they had explained that, Pops went up to heaven. Heaven's up in the sky somehow. I mean, they're trying to explain it in a way that is that they thought was accurate to her understanding. And yet, when she saw the plane go up in the sky, to her, that was heaven, and Grams was going up to be with Pops. And she was really upset that both of them were going to be gone. And so then they had to kind of explain things, to her. And, oh, no, honey. She's going in an airplane. She's going to visit Annie D. Blah, blah, blah. She's going to come back sometime. And it brought up the point, though, as we were talking, that when we're talking to our kids like that, it's really important to use accurate language. And so that, kids don't get so confused and they have a good understanding of what's going on. So another example I'll talk to you about is we recently in my classroom had a little boy and their cat died. And the cat wasn't very old and it died. They're trying to figure out what was wrong, but it was right after he left for school. And so the mom came and was talking to us and like, how do I talk to him? How do I tell him? And so we ran through some things and I explained some things, and I had another specialist that was there with me, and so we both talked to her and shared some of our ideas on how she could best use that. And it was really nice because I could see that mom was really listening intently and wanting to take the advice that would be best for her family. And the next day, the little boy came to school, and she kind of got a drop off and said, he knows. I said, okay. So, but I didn't say anything to him because my idea is often to let the child lead. And especially when they're not my family. I love them like family, but, you want to make sure that you stay in your place as a teacher. And so it was during center time, and I was sitting by him, and I looked at him, I said, playing, so how you doing, bud? And he looked up at me and he said, my cat died. I said, oh, well, that's really sad. But he was very matter of fact about it, actually. My cat died. And I said, oh, I'm really sad to hear that, honey. And he said, yeah, his heart just, oh, I'm sorry. I bit my cough drop on accident. He said, his heart broke. It's not working anymore. And he can't stay alive if his heart is broken. And so he's gone from us right now. And I said, oh, okay. Well, I'm glad that you understand. And do you have any questions about that? And he said, no, I don't know quite why his heart, or not quite. He said, I don't know why his heart broke, but I know that he can't live without his heart. I said, okay, that's good. And I said, if you ever want to talk about your cat, you're welcome to talk about your cat to me, and I'm happy to listen. So, and he went on from there. And he was doing very well with it. So I think that when you can be very specific, their body isn't working anymore, their heart isn't working anymore, whatever. If there was an accident, my father died in an accident. And so, you could say that his body got very broken in this accident and his body couldn't work anymore. For him to be alive, he couldn't work anymore. And so he died because his body is broken. And that's an easy way, nothing's easy about this, guys. Nothing's easy about this. But it's very simple, but it's factual, right? And kids can understand that. And then you're there for their questions. And you're going to want to hear the language that they're using to describe what they understand happened. And then you can tell them when they're right and when they're wrong and blah, blah, blah. But the truth is, sweetie, we're not going to see Grandpa again, or we're not going to see Kitty again, right? Now, I got the feeling with our Michele that faith really isn't a big part for her. She had a lot of great advice, but in a way, I think that moving on and giving the hope of, like with my niece, or my granddaughter. Oh my goodness, TJ. My cousin had this understanding, and it was like she was expecting, or was Gramps going to go get Pops and bring him back? That was another thing she asked too, I remember. Is Gramps going to get him then and bring him back? And so they had to explain to her about that. So she still had this hope of somehow seeing him again because of our beliefs that, life continues beyond, but it's in a different realm, and it's, we got the whole heaven thing, and none of us truly really understand how all of that works. I think we're all going to be a little surprised when it happens to us, and we're like, oh, this is how it's going to go. And so, but, so my cousin became kind of confused that first she thought Gramps was going to go up and die to be with Pop in the plane. And then when they said, no, Gramps is going to be coming back, then she said, well, is she going to bring Poppy with her? Because she was clearly going up to the sky. And so just be aware that as children process the whole death thing, the finality of it for this life, and then we tell them, but he's living on, he's looking over you. And that can be peaceful and reassuring to them, but we want to make sure that it's done in a way that they're not going to be disappointed, that they're not going to see him or her or the cat as they may be looking over. We won't see them again on earth. We'll see them, when we die, but when it's our turn to go, but we have to wait for our turn, and their turn is over. And so, we use very common words like that. And I know it's very hard when you're going through it and your emotions are just so huge. So if, you're struggling with that, because the kids really do need that attention. And maybe you've got the ability, just depending on where you are in life, right? Just depending on that, you may have the ability to see to the needs of their kids, or you may not. And so if you don't, just be real about it. There's nothing to be ashamed of or whatever, but you'll need to enlist the help of somebody that is close to them, that is near to them, that they trust, to be there and kind of help them talk through it, get their needs. It's great to have help with counseling, with services. Michelle's group is called Good Grief Parenting. And you can just do www.goodgriefparenting.com. She's got a ton of resources, some great people to help give you the words that might be useful to you in your family, and help your child work through that. Especially when it's they really especially concentrate on when a child is dealing with the death of a sibling. Because that's something like, wait a minute, they're not old, right? And so something's gone horribly wrong. Either it's a devastating illness or an accident. That's pretty much it. And so you have to help them, and then they're going to worry, well, is that going to happen to me? Oh, no, not till you're older. Well, Joey didn't get older, or whatever. So I know that, and I talked a little bit about this in the podcast, but I've had 2 students that have lost siblings, and one lost her brother, her older brother, he was 8, to cancer, and the cancer one was younger. I'm sorry. Lost her younger brother to cancer, and then the other one in kindergarten lost her older brother to a drive-by shooting. Very different circumstances, right? One, you have some preparation, it's expected, it's still sad, it's still devastating to you. Well, I don't mean to say it's not, but there's that prep work that's able to get in there. When it's very sudden, like a car accident or, God forbid, a drive-by shooting or whatever, it's very sudden. And I looked in time at the differences. These kids were several years apart, in my teaching career, but it made me start thinking about the differences in how they managed it. One thing that was interesting to me is that in both cases, the child was in school the next day after the death. And at first I thought, oh gosh, because I had kids that were now behaving very differently. And the parents did not tell me about the boy, the brother that had died from cancer. I didn't even know he had cancer. The parents had never said anything to me about it. And so it was towards the end of the day, one of her friends, because I saw she was acting really off, and so I said, oh, is so-and-so okay? She's your friend. Do you know what's happening to her? She just seems super angry today. And they said, oh, her brother died last night. What? And so I'm calling around to get services for her and trying to get a hold of the parents and see what's going on, because I always wanted to respect the beliefs and the foundations that family had. And so I'm very careful not to try and interject my beliefs and systems into a situation where another family may have something that is very different from my beliefs. So I want to make sure that I'm keeping that, steady. But then I also realized that in both cases, they felt like their child needed something normal to do because their world had become very not normal all of a sudden. And by doing something that was normal, they thought would help them along. I don't know whether it did or not, but that was their thinking. And another thing, as I came through it, there's a lot of decisions and arrangements that have to be made. And if you have a young child with you, it can be very hard. And so perhaps it was a way for them to be somewhere safe where, they're with their friends, they're in familiar places, and they were free then to go and make whatever arrangements, fill out whatever reports, do whatever it was that they needed to do to make things going. So, okay, that makes sense. And then we talked a little bit about what if you have a child and it's happened to their friend. So their friend has lost a sibling. How do you support them in what they're going to do? And, one of the things is you can call and even offer, can I watch Susie while you've got all these things going on? Katie loves her. We love her. And she'll have a safe place to be. And you can go do what you want to do. And that family may say, oh, gosh, that would be so great. Thank you. Or they may say, we really want to be together and hold tight to one another, but thanks for the offer. And that's fine. But they will always remember your offer to come in and help in that way. And so I remember that when my dad died, and his was very sudden in an accident, and all of us kids, as adult kids, I was 35 when he died, that we were sitting in the kitchen, and there's 7 of us, so, we're sitting on the counters, on the island, and we're just talking and sharing stories, and it was actually kind of a pleasant time of sharing with my family. And I saw this lady come in through the front door, didn't knock. I'm sure she was a friend of my mom's, and came in, opened the fridge, looked in, and you can't imagine all the family that was there. All of my mom's siblings were there. My dad's siblings were there. We had a ton of grandkids. I'm trying to remember how many. Mom wound up with like 38 grandkids, but I don't think she didn't have all of them yet. So she probably was around 28, 30 grandkids. Still a lot, right? This lady comes in, opens, shuffles around in my mom's refrigerator, and I saw her turn around and go out saying, apples, they need apples. And an hour later, the doorbell rang, and there was a huge box of just fresh, crisp, wonderful, this was in November, very end of November, apples. And it was so nice to just be able to give one of the kids an apple, if they're looking for a snack or whatever. It was very thoughtful. Some people are really blessed with that intuition, that ability to look at a situation, know someone well enough, and know what the right thing to do is. But a lot of us are not blessed with that. In some cases I have it, in other cases I don't. And so it's okay to go ahead and say, I had this idea, does this help or not? And they can say yes or no. And we're not going to take offense that, well, I offered, right? Really? You're going to get upset with someone at a time like that? So, you can give an offer and then you can say, okay, that's all right. And I'm sorry, I was just trying to think of something to be of assistance. Is there something that would work for you? Now that you've already offered to help and you had a plan, even though it may not be appropriate for their family needs at that time, there's that psychology of knowing that someone thought about it and came up with a plan. And they're going to be more likely to say, what we could use is blah, 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 right? Or maybe on the day of the funeral, someone to help us with the kids, during the viewing or during the funeral itself. Maybe some of the kids are too young, could be disruptive, they don't understand what's going on, I remember when I was 11, I had a great uncle that our family was actually very close to, Uncle Ike, and he died, and that was the very first funeral I ever went to at 11. And I remember he was a jokester. He was always like playing pranks and doing silly things. And I remember just really expecting him to jump out of the casket at the funeral and say, surprise! I would not have been surprised if he did that, because that was my 11-year-old mind thinking through. So if you decide to take a child to a funeral, whether it was an adult that they were close to or the funeral of another child, and you've decided that's the right thing to do for your family and for your child, then I would be really specific on what questions do you have, You know, a lot of time kids are afraid, well, do I have to touch him? Right? No, you don't. You don't even have to go up and look. You know, we're just going to sit there. We're going to listen to some stories about their life and how important they were. And there will be people who are crying. Sometimes that's a real scary thing for kids, is when the grown-ups around them are crying. That's very unsettling to a kid. I even remember when JFK was killed. Yes, I do remember. I was a little I was first grade. And I was out on the playground, and the teachers came and said we had to go home, but they were all crying, and they just said, get your coats and go home. We didn't know why. And that's funny. They didn't have our parents come check us out. They just said, toodles, see ya. And so I walked the 1 mile home, and I walked in the door, and I remember just thinking, why is everybody crying? This is nuts. You know, why are they crying? And so I was a little uneasy. And then when I walked into my house, and my mom was sitting there in front of the TV, I remember she had a load of laundry. There were 3 of us at that point, 3 kids. And she was in front and was folding laundry and sobbing. And that just scared the life out of me, that all the grown-ups were crying, and even my mom was crying, and I didn't understand. And so she tried to explain to me and what they were saying on the news, and that this bad guy, you know, had come and shot the president. And I knew we had President Kennedy. I remember my mom going to hear one of his speeches, and I stayed at a friend's house. And so I kind of knew who he was. And so the understanding that it was dead, you know, it was all a little confusing to me. And there wasn't a time when adults were really taking time to talk to kids about these things. So I just say that if your child is dealing with something, just let them know that you are there to answer all their questions. And they may seem very simple or confusing, because they're confused and they don't have the life experience that you and I have to get through something like that. And so they're going to need you there. And if, like I said, if you can't be there, get someone in line to get there. If it's too hard for you to talk about, if there's too much anger about how this all happened, or however you're feeling, you need to validate, you know, recognize your feelings. Yeah, I'm feeling this. Am I able to manage it right now or not? And the answer is if I'm not, because the children are feeling things too. And we don't want to tell them it's going to be okay. It's not going to be okay. They're not coming back. Everything is not going to be okay. And so if you keep telling that, don't cry, don't cry. I hear that often with little kids. Honey, don't cry. It's okay. No. They're scared. They're confused. They're sad. You know, they have all these emotions going on. And so we don't want to tell them not to cry. We can talk to them about, you know, how are you feeling? What do you think? And they might not really know. You might want to talk to them about some of the fun things that they did with the deceased. You know, and you might say, you know, are you worried about are you worried about anything? You know, do you have any questions? And it's funny how very down to earth a lot of times their questions are. Like, if I go to a funeral, do I have to touch a dead person? That's a real common thing with little kids. Do I have to look at them? And be aware that if all of the adults around them are crying, that's very unsettling for them. And so you're going to want to make sure that you understand everybody's sad, because we all loved your brother Joey. We all still love. I don't like to talk about my mom and dad in past tense. For me, I still love them. And I think that they love me still. You know, I don't know. They may have learned about it by now. But but it's hard for me to say they were great, because in my mind, they are still great. Does that make sense? And so we can talk about some of those things with them. But the younger they are, the more basic their questions are going to be. And so if you just kind of listen to the things they're saying and listen as they're talking, maybe with another kid, maybe someone's come over, and they may say things very matter-of-factly at the beginning because they're just grasping it. And it may take them a few days or a few weeks to let go and like really cry and mourn about it, because right away at the main part of it, they're just going to be confused. And so we need to help them through it. We don't want to scare them. We want to reassure them. If they're worried that this might happen to me, just say we're going to do everything we can to keep you safe and healthy. And I don't plan on it happening to you for any time soon. And just kind of move on. Be sure that you're not going to make promises that you can't keep. Right? And when you say, oh, you're going to see Uncle Ike again. Oh, you're going to see your brother Joey again. They're going to take that literally and think, oh, in the next 3 or 4 days, they'll show up again. So we have to make sure that they're not on earth anymore. We won't see them again until it's our turn. But we're not going to have a turn, hopefully, for a long, long time. And those are the kinds of things that can help you. Michele says it in a much better way. She's got a lot of great resources and very matter-of-factly. I do believe that faith does help. But I think that we need to be very careful in how we express that in a way that they can understand, and they're not going to be angry or disappointed that you said I'm going to see him again, right? Well, it's been a week, and to them, that's a long time, right? So you want to make sure that you're explaining it in realistic terms of what it truly means in their day-to-day life. So I hope that helps you out. Next week, I have this super cool guy. He goes by Neo-Positivity. His name is Neo Davila. I can't ever get it right. Davila. And if you look him up under Neo-Positivity, he's just got this great organization. He does lives. He's mostly on YouTube, but he is on Facebook as well. And when he does his lives, he does them on a wide spectrum of platforms. But he's a dad. He's got 3 kids. His youngest is 3 or 4, and he's a retired cop, and he's a pilot. And when he was a cop in what had been designated at that time as the most dangerous city in the country. And he is into the law of attraction. And so how do we attract the things that come to us? And how can we use that? And we can use it in business. We can use it, in our social life. But we can also use it as we're building our family and raising our kids. And so actually we hit it off so well that he invited me to be on his symposium. He does a symposium every month. It's the 3rd Saturday of every month. So I was on his symposium last Saturday, but I'm also going to be on his next symposium in February, which will be the 3rd Saturday in February. But you'll hear more about it on the podcast. He's just a very cool, wonderful dad that admits that he makes mistakes, that he's learning from his mistakes, and he's growing as a parent. He is a truly imperfect hero, and I just totally love talking with him. So keep your eye out for those. I'll send out things. If you're on my newsletter, you'll get all the information on him and how to register for his symposiums if you want to sit in on them. They are free. And it was just really fun how, we'd have someone talk for a little bit and then everyone joins in and feeds in on the topic that they're talking on. And then you can type in and ask questions and say, oh, DJ said something here and I want to know more about blah, blah, blah. Or what do they mean by blah, blah, blah. And so it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun for me. And so I agreed to do it again next month just because, so I would have time. There's no way you could have known about last Saturday, but so you could have time to learn about the symposium. And they have a lot of people that listen in on 8 different platforms. So that's pretty cool. And then I want to remind you that I have a scavenger hunt available. And so you just go to my littleheartsacademyusa.com and you can just click, you'll see, it's like right towards the top, you'll see scavenger hunt and you click on it, you can download it, it's for free, and it's got 15 different fun things that you can do with your kids. I know in a lot of places the weather's not great and it's snowy. What am I going to do with my kids? And then when you're done with your 15 things, which you've had a lot of fun with your kids, right? But you can scan it and email it to me at my email, djstutz@littleheartsacademyusa.com. It's on the paper, so you don't need to worry about it. And everyone that I get in, I'm going to have a drawing, and I'm offering 2 1-hour sessions. So 2 people will get a 1-hour session with just me, and we'll kind of talk and identify your parenting style, what are the issues you're facing, what are some things that we can implement right away to try and make some changes. And so you will have that opportunity. I usually charge for a one-time one-on-one, it's like $77. So, there you go. You can have a chance for that and just really have the fun that we have as we're working with our families. So I hope that you will go and do that. And of course, please share. Just click on share on this video and get the word out, and so that we can reach more families and hopefully help them find joy in parenting. So until next week, we'll see ya. Bye-bye.